Richard, I wanted to start talking with you, out of the gate today about what's going on in flood insurance. A lot of people concerned about this. I'm concerned about it as a real estate broker and franchise owner. I look at what's going on and I know that it is going to, have challenges for our real estate market. And it appears that starting Tuesday, Citizens is going to, or not Citizens, FEMA and NFIP are going to have pretty considerable, increases in flood insurance costs because of, all the things that have happened. And we talked about this before because the flood insurance program, through FEMA has always operated, in the red.
Right.
They've always been, in the red, and they've kind of been a subsidy organization where they've, really helped keep flood costs down by helping subsidize it. Now they're pulling a lot of that out, and people are having to pay actual cost, and across the board, you're going to see rates increase. And again, if you have questions about what we're going to talk about, or if you have comments about what's going on with flood insurance, you can call us 855-970-WFLA. But I wanted to start off and ask you, specifically kind of bullet point it, for the listeners out there, what exactly is changing starting Tuesday, unless there's a political miracle.
Right. Well, basically what's happening is everybody who has been purchasing flood insurance has been purchasing it at a subsidized rate. And what that means is that they haven't been paying what the National Flood Service expects to pay out in claims. The customer's been paying less in premium than what the Flood Service expects to pay out in claims. Now, where they thought they were going to make that up with was the people who didn't need to buy flood insurance, who weren't in an active flood zone, but they thought, well, I better get it anyways just to be safe. And those are what we call preferred flood zones. And from the beginning, the National Flood Service thought they were going to be able to sell enough of those to make up for the subsidized rates in the actual flood services. It kind of sounds like what they're talking about with health insurance, but that's a whole nother
don't get me started
there. but basically, it hasn't worked out, and they've been running in the red from year one. So the national federal government has finally decided, listen, we've been floating you guys long enough. It's time for you to start paying your own way. So they have they've decided by passing the Bigger Waters Flood Act, which was passed last year, they've decided that they're going to pretty much get rid of subsidies on flood insurance. And there's so much information that we're hearing. I mean, I would say probably this week 50% of our calls in our office were related to flood insurance. And some of the things we're hearing from people that, they were told by their realtor, by their mortgage broker, by their neighbor next door, we're looking at them going, well, that's not how it really works at all. I don't know how you came up with that. And the first thing you need to realize is that it's already pretty much in effect. So the effective date, or the cutoff date of...
It's like June or something, right?
June of 2012.
So a year and a half ago.
Yeah, June of 2012 is the cutoff date. So if you have purchased flood insurance since June of 2012, you're already in the pool there. And there's not really anything you can do about it. We have people calling up going, well, I got to buy it before Tuesday or else I'm going to pay a lot more.
No.
And that's not how it works. Second of all, your flood insurance is not going to skyrocket on Tuesday. So how this is going to work is that Tuesday is the date when all the changes become effective. And where you're going to see the difference is when your policy renews. And it's either going to happen, on an incremental basis, year after year after year, where you're going to see increases over the next few years. There are going to be a few worst case scenarios where they are going to see an immediate increase on their next renewal, and there's no way around that. There are going to be some of those, but that's not everybody. So everybody's hearing all these horror stories about they're going to be paying $10,000 in flood insurance. That's not the case. There are a few of those out there, but that's not the case for everybody. But basically how it's going to work is that if you are in the most risky flood zones and you've had your house for a while, you're going to see about a 25% increase every year until you reach what they call the non-subsidized rate. If you are in a flood zone, but it's not the most risky flood zone, you're going to see about a 10% increase. And I think pretty much everybody in flood insurance can expect at least a 10% increase over the next few years until they reach that non-subsidized rate.
So something I saw, Mississippi is suing to try and block this hike. The Department of Insurance for Mississippi has filed a lawsuit, attempting to stop this. And obviously there are major political pushes. If you're wondering what you can do out there, I would say, call your congressman, call your senator, express your voice. There's lots of petitions out there being filed. National Association of Realtors is doing one. The Florida Association of Realtors is doing one. If you have concern, if you think this is going to, impact our real estate market, if you don't like it, then certainly, voice your opinion. I think the biggest thing that this has noticed for me is how much we need to reform in flood insurance. One of the statistics that I thought was really scary was that Floridians, unfortunately, that have received the federal subsidies, it's been kind of a little bit out of balance. So, for example, $4 for every $1 that Florida has spent has come back to Florida. In other words, we're paying for the claims for a lot of other states. Mm-hmm. And again, that's going to happen, and at some point we might have a big storm and that kind of gets out of balance a little bit. But some of the states where you see, more claims, wouldn't you think that those states should pay a little bit more than us? I mean, it seems kind of illogical to penalize us when we haven't had the claims that other states have had, and where we're paying way more in. I think the program is meant to kind of just, have everyone pay their way. It seems like Florida's been paying their unfair way, for a long time.
Well, and the thing that you see is that everybody, when they think of flood insurance, they think of the ocean. And flood insurance the ocean isn't the biggest factor in flood insurance. I have friends that live in Minnesota, and it's amazing how much flooding they get in the Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota region, and that's every single year, nonstop. They know when their flood season is. 3 weeks ago, everybody recalls when Colorado was
and that's not a place you think about for
flooding.
flooding.
And some of those houses that were flooded are at a 5,000-foot elevation, and they got wiped off the map. And right now we have flooding going on in Seattle and Oregon and the Pacific Northwest. So it doesn't always have to do with the ocean, and that's what everybody thinks about. So they automatically zero in on Florida.
It can be lakes. It can be just low-lying areas. Like if you drive around South Tampa when it's raining really bad, I mean there's streets that you have to wade through. Mm-hmm. And it's not right on the ocean.
Right.
And I think again that you're right. That is a misconception. What are some of the other things you're hearing that are just not facts? Calls coming into your office, people concerned about this, and that have it all wrong, that they're being misled or whatever it is. What are some of the biggest kind of shocking or people that have been so off base that you've heard of in the last few weeks about this?
Well, the biggest one, and this has been multiple times, is that we've had people call into our office who have been told by their realtor. These are people who are out actively looking for houses, and they've been told by their realtor that they shouldn't buy a house right now because they could pay up to $10,000 in flood insurance. And as an agent, there's a little bit of diligence that we have to do to look up the house and figure things out. And we discovered that the house is not even in an active flood zone. So we're kind of scratching our head going, here's a realtor talking himself out of, a customer, and
with bad information.
And the customer's not even in a flood zone.
Just completely misinformed.
This customer could buy flood insurance if he wanted to, which it might cost $300, $400.
And the news has been a little sensational about it. I mean, they've made it seem like, that you're, and again, are there going to be circumstances where people get dramatic increases in their flood costs? Yes. But
yes.
The sensationalism with the news has caused people to sit on the fence. I mean, we've got a couple of waterfront homes priced between the the $400,000 and the $600,000 range. And those are the properties where the consumer wants to be in a waterfront home, but they're still on a budget. If you're talking about selling $2 and $3 and $4 million waterfront homes, let's face it, if you have the money to buy that property, a few $1,000s a year in additional flood insurance probably ain't going to stop you from buying it.
Right.
So the most impactful part of the market is in that kind of lower price level waterfront homes in Tampa Bay, and the traffic on them has slowed considerably.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of this. It's because of the sensationalism, where if people actually get out there and get the facts, it's really not going to be as bad as it's being, you know, perceived. And hopefully, with all the political pressures in place, again, there are motions being filed. There are, you know, last minute changes that could happen. There's pressure from, you know, Florida senators and you know, politicians all throughout, you know, impacted areas that have flood insurance that are pushing, you know, to get this thing extended again. And again, even if they extend a year, eventually we're probably going to be dealing with this. But, you know, the thing I think that's frustrating is, you know, with all the subsidies and the social welfare and all the programs the federal government's willing to spend money on, you know, they don't see the value in continuing to do, you know, to subsidize this program, you know, while they spend billions on other programs.
Right.
But this program is going to affect real people. It's going to cause people not to be able to buy homes or not to be able to sell, but not to the extent that the news media has made it appear to be. It's for the average person with flood insurance, the increase isn't going to be as remarkable as people, you know, as the media is making us think.
Well, and I agree with that. The one thing that you know that we can get into here is that there's a large concentration in St. Petersburg in Pinellas County,
where there's going to be some pockets there where it is going to get, where the increases are going to be dramatic, because they're right on the water, they're on the Gulf, they're the biggest at risk. They don't have anything protecting them or anything. We're going to continue that conversation, talk a little bit more about flood insurance with Richard Vazquez from Artisan Insurance, as well as talk about some real estate news updates and 6 tips to weigh the best resale home improvements after a quick break here on the Duncan Duo Show.